Good morning, everyone. Today is probably the craziest and busiest day of the whole 2 weeks. It's Finance Day, so we're very, very happy to start the day with a very important event. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear friends, it is a great pleasure and honor to welcome you to the NDC Partnership Pavilion for the joint event of the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action and the NDC Partnership. I express our sincere gratitude to our esteemed speakers and all of you for being here today. Today is Finance Day, so we appreciate taking the time to join us to address one of the most pressing topics for this conference. COP28 and the global stocktake mark a crucial moment of course correction. We need to ramp up ambition and act with the necessary urgency to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. And for that, finance is critical. The NDC Partnership is a global coalition that brings together more than 200 members, including more than 120 countries, both developed and developing, and nearly 100 institutions that work together to deliver on ambitious climate action to help achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement and, more broadly, to drive sustainable development. We have collaborated closely with the Coalition of Finance Ministers since its launch in 2019 by leveraging the strengths of each initiative to enhance the engagement and support Ministries of Finance in climate action. The partnership currently supports more than 90 member developing countries to implement their climate ambitions as reflected in their long-term strategies and NDCs. Nearly 40 of those are members also of the coalition. One distinct aim of the partnership is to make sure that climate goals are actions are owned and driven by the entire government. Finance and planning ministers are critical in advancing low carbon and climate resilient development agendas. These ministries bring a long-term view for the development pathways of their countries, a critical element that needs to inform NDCs and long-term strategies. We know from the coalition work and from our experience that when Ministries of Finance are strongly involved in the design and implementation of NDCs, they can align NDCs and the long-term views of the countries with growth projections and make them fiscally sound. They can integrate climate considerations into economic and fiscal policies. They can ensure the prioritization of climate actions within the country's budget allocation process. They can improve the enabling environments to mobilize finance from public and private sources, and they can assess the efficiency of climate-related expenditures, thereby adding informed climate policy decision-making. Looking ahead, our collaboration will step up and will focus on mobilizing and coordinating tailored support to equip Ministries of Finance to actively engage in the update of NDCs due in 2025 and design long-term strategies that will drive the transition to a low-carbon and climate resilience economy. We know that the outcomes of the global stocktake will tell us that we need to do more. We need to do more in terms of ambition, more in terms of implementation, and more in terms of mobilizing finance. And the role of the Ministries of Finance will be critical in that effort. Today's event will outline the pivotal role that the Ministries of Finance will play in the design and implementation of ambitious and implementable NDCs and long-term strategies, showcasing Ministries of Finance leadership across the globe, and present how the partnership supports Ministries of Finance involvement in the update of the NDCs and the formulation of long-term strategies in a coordinated way with country-specific support. We look forward to a fruitful discussion and strengthening our collaboration in 2024 and beyond. It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce our esteemed speakers to officially open this event. I would like to invite Honorable Sigrid Kaag, Coalition Co-Chair, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance for the Netherlands, and former Co-Chair of the NDC Partnership, and always a champion of the partnership. Minister, it's a pleasure to have you here, please.
Thank you very much. Warm welcome also to my colleague, the Minister of Finance of Nigeria and others. Pablo, thanks again, and it's good to be here in a different capacity, speaking with you. And we're opening, in a way, we're highlighting the NDC partnership with the coalition of Ministers of Finance. So I think it's good to leverage all our resources, our knowledge, our commitment to really drive this agenda. Because, of course, as Pablo has already said, we are gathering at a very critical moment. And the recent UNFCCC synthesis report shows that under the current NDCs, 87% of the carbon budget available, if we want to keep global warming under 1.5 degrees Celsius, will be used by 2030. It's equivalent to approximately 2 years of projected total global CO2 emissions by 2030. And the recent report by the UNFCCC on long-term low emissions development, the LT-LEDS, shows that parties are assuming most of their emission reductions by 2050. It will take place after 2030. So it actually shows that we need to achieve much more before or by 2030, as opposed to planning for 2050 and only start working to reduce from 2030. And that sort of paradigm shift is something we need to achieve politically, but we need to organize ourselves accordingly, and we need to finance the actions required. As you know from elections around the world, that doesn't necessarily prove to be easier nowadays. I think the challenge will be even greater. But the urgency and the task in front of us is ultimately the only one we need to respond to. Science is clear. The changes are dramatic around the world, and hence the urgency to cut reductions at the right time, paced, but having 2030 as a first milestone is extremely important. So to secure a safe and world for current and future generations, we need to deepen GHG emission cuts. And the next rounds of NDCs are really, really important. They need to be more ambitious. We've said this too at a meeting chaired by the Secretary General. It was called On Integrity, or Integrity Matters. Ultimately, ambitious and scalable NDC reports are at the heart of everything we can organize, we can fund, we can plan for, but also that we are accountable for from an international level too. This is why I was pleased when I became Minister of Finance to join and to co-chair with Indonesia the Coalition of Ministers of Finance. Because ultimately, if you do not have Ministers of Finance in the room, if you do not budget for it, if you do not allocate, and if you do not prioritize fiscally spending on climate priorities, mitigation and adaptation, you will not achieve. And this is why the Coalition of Ministers of Finance, now 92 members, are committed to align policies with the Paris Agreement and engage in NDCs preparations as well as their implementation. Because it shows we can do more through the lens of finance. When it comes to financing mechanisms, the climate action policies, when it comes to budgeting, but also prioritizing and aligning incompatible budget proposals. Ultimately, most national governments will say, well, I'd like to do more on climate action, be it mitigation or adaptation, but my Minister of Finance is not willing, because Ministers of Finance are by nature, by force of the job, conservative. The classic answer is no, it cannot be. Whereas we need to be in a role, yes, it can be, and this is how we will do it. Across the board, using fiscal instruments, using our leverage through regulation over the financial sector, getting in the private sector. But that requires policy, it requires data, and it requires, of course, political will. You've seen this exemplified through the statement, the climate action statement, adopted in the margins of the Marrakesh meeting, where a number of measures are detailed and a lot of proposals are adopted. So at a national level, countries can move forward. I also hope we'll see this as a follow-up or an implementation chart when it comes to the design of the new NDCs, matched by financing. Not just concessional financing, also domestic resource mobilization, using the width of the fiscal instruments that are available. All this said, I'm delighted to intensify the partnership with the NDC Partnership. I mean, you cannot use the word partnership enough, I think. You're offering the appropriate membership support. I know from a prior life as Minister for International Cooperation and co-chair, working with Pablo and his team, that you're in high demand. The quality of your expertise is phenomenal, but also the way it is on offer. It is supportive, it is flexible, but it's tailor-made to the requirements of each country, knowing the diversity as well as the divergence of challenges many countries face. So let's make the next round of NDCs truly ambitious, let's make them implementable, but let's also make them financeable, a non-existing word, but let's make the financing available, but also have the right type of proposals ready, so no one can say no. The onus is then on the one who doesn't provide the financing. So we need to turn the tables. Critical moment. I think there's a lot of knowledge in the room. Financing needs to be leveraged, and ministers of finance need to play their part. No is not an answer. Yes should be the starting point, and additionality is our common quest. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minister. And we're also kind of coming up with new words here. We say that NDCs, new NDCs need to be more ambitious, but high quality, implementable, and investable, which doesn't exist either. So I think that it's good to add that kind of lexicon to our already jargony communication. So thank you very much. And now very proud and honored to invite the Honorable Mr. Wael Edun, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy for Nigeria, for brief introduction remarks. We're very proud, sir, to be working very closely with Nigeria and providing support in this new ambitious era of the government. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, and good morning. Well, I've only been Minister of Finance for 3 months, so it's my very first COP as Minister of Finance, and it's very, and I'm glad to be. I am new to the NDC Partnership and the Coalition of Ministers of Finance, but I look forward to playing my own part. I mean, I think we all know where we are in terms of the situation, the crises that are before us, biodiversity, climate, and for ministers of finance in particular, debt, particularly for those of us in the third world. So the good news is that I think that what I have heard is that, yes, we're approaching the certain tipping points, but at the same time, it is still solvable, it is still savable. And I listened to Mr. John Kerry the other day talk about what has happened in the maritime sector and the new sort of financing mechanisms, the guarantees that are available, the new forms of debt for nature swaps. But in particular, as my colleague has just said, financing is critical, and domestic resource mobilization is also important. So I'll just give from my own example. Yesterday, we managed in Nigeria to sign a reforestation climate action project, 100 million euros of private investment. I think we should clap for that. And essentially, in looking at it and looking at the fact that, look, for 4 or 5 years, there will be investment from private investors in reforestation and protecting the ecosystem and building up a case that can now be presented as qualifying for carbon credits, and it will be audited. And I looked and I said, look, if this is good enough for foreign investors, it's good enough for Nigerian investors, the pension funds, the investment funds, the equity funds. And so I think just as we've just heard, financeability, investability is there on a much broader level than we would otherwise think. And of course, we do know that the figures that are needed are huge. And more people are coming to the table each day. And I know this whole issue of guarantees that allow, for example, a poorer, indebted country to raise funds at a cheaper level and thereby, you know, contribute some of those savings to climate action is also a very important way. In Nigeria, we need $10 billion every year. And as you say, we don't wait till 2030 to start running. From now, we need $10 billion a year investment to get to net zero by 2060. So it's a huge task. It's a huge financial ask, and we have to be innovative. We have to bring the private sector in, and I look forward to working with my colleagues in the coalition of finance ministers and working on much more incisive, much more bolder and riskier, I would say, NDC targets. So on that note, I look forward to being part of the conversation. I am new to it, but I'm eager, I'm willing, and I'm keen on investability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you. And I would like now to give the floor to my colleague, Mariana Panuncio-Feldman. She is the Director of Country Engagement of the NDC Partnership Support Unit, and she's going to be explaining a little bit in more detail how we plan to work together with the Coalition of Finance Ministers to provide specific, tailor-made country identified support to ministries of finance so that they can drive the ambition of countries and accelerate the implementation of their commitments under the Paris Agreement. Mariana.
Thank you. And good morning to all. Thank you for being here with us today. Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear friends, it is my pleasure to be here today to talk about how the partnership's instruments can support stronger engagement from the Ministries of Finance in climate action. The objective of my intervention is to provide an overview of what the partnership's thematic call, a particular window within the partnership, is and how it can provide coordinated and tailored support to Ministries of Finance so that they can take a leading role in the update of NDCs and the development of long-term strategies. So the emerging results of the global stocktake and the socioeconomic impacts of climate-related events are calling for an increasing leadership across all of society. The mid and the long-term visions, strategies, and targets that have been put in place by countries are narrowing the gap to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, but we know it's not enough. On the one hand, we know that more is needed on the ambition side to deliver on the collective goals in line with the goals of the Paris Agreement. But on the other hand, we need to implement the commitments that have already been put in place by countries. And that requires an unprecedented amount of climate finance. Recent estimates give us a sense that we need $5.2 trillion per year, or approximately 5% of the global GDP, to limit global temperatures to 1.5, the temperature rise. At the same time, we know that the economic costs of climate change are rising by the day, and they are creating social and economic impacts with acute implications, particularly for developing countries. So tackling climate change requires a fundamental shift in development trajectories, in investments, in economic and fiscal policies, all of this to fuel the rapid and systemic transition to a low carbon and climate resilient pathway. This means that climate change demands a coordinated response from all actors, public, private, subnational, and non-state actors. And this whole of society approach is actually the DNA of the NDC partnership and its mission to mobilize and coordinate stakeholders to advance countries' climate and development priorities. So in this context, the Ministries of Finance have a unique role to play. And I think that the case has been made both by Pablo and Minister Kak very powerfully, but I just wanted to lean into this a bit further. Why? Because Ministries of Finance play a leading role in the development and implementation of economic and fiscal policies, and they have expertise in financial management that is ultimately critical to deliver on the NDC successfully. Finance ministers are uniquely positioned to align NDCs and long-term strategies with the development strategies and the growth and fiscal projections for the country. They can unpack and help us understand the economic impacts of climate change. They can help us integrate climate considerations into economic and fiscal policies. They can ensure the prioritization of climate actions within the budget's allocation process. They can help improve the enabling environment so that we can mobilize climate finance at scale. And ultimately, they can help us assess the efficiency of climate-related expenditures and inform climate policy making. So Ministries of Finance are central to the path ahead. And so with that in mind, this is very pertinent to the work that the partnership is supporting at the moment. At COP27, the NDC Partnership launched the Thematic call focused on the long-term strategies and NDCs alignment, update, and enhancement. This initiative aims to assist countries in planning, developing, and enhancing the NDCs for the upcoming 2025 submissions in alignment with the Glasgow Climate Pact. The Thematic call also aims to support countries to plan for their long-term transition by assisting them in crafting robust long-term strategies tailored to the national context and ensure that the midterm planning and the long-term planning are not disconnected, but rather than the planning processes, the data, and the targets for NDCs and long-term strategies are aligned. And to do so, the Thematic call offers support across three broad streams. The first stream focuses on preparatory support to basically set the foundations for necessary conditions of success. One of the issues in which the partnership prides itself is that we meet countries where they're at. And that means that some countries are still trying to figure out how they're going to undertake this process. And this stream 1, the preparatory support, helps countries do that. Stream 2 is the one that actually supports countries in developing, enhancing, and aligning their NDCs and long-term strategies. And Stream 3 concentrates on the catalytic interventions, on supporting those catalytic interventions for long-term transformation embedded in the long-term strategies. Ultimately, the aim of all of this effort is to empower countries to contribute strategically to their development objectives through the delivery of their NDCs and their long-term strategies. So what have we done so far? We launched at COP27. We framed it as a 3-year process. Why? Because we know that these processes, if we don't want them to be a one-off exercise, we need to give countries enough time to build on the previous round of NDCs and really strengthen the institutional processes and the planning processes to really be embedded in the development planning and the budgeting for the country. So starting last year, we've engaged countries that were interested in seeking this support. And 1 year on, we have 49 countries that have already engaged in the thematic call, 25 of which are coalition members. 36 of these countries have already submitted requests, with an impressive 89% of these requests receiving direct offers of assistance through our partners. The partnership mobilizes support. And in this, we're seeing a very strong response from partners in basically to assist countries in what they've requested of us. 15 countries have actually requested support specifically related to finance and investment. And we are having coverage from around the world. Right now, in terms of geographic distribution, Africa is the most active region already in the thematic call, and it's followed by Latin America and the Caribbean, and then by Asia Pacific and Eastern Europe. And in this first year, most of the requests have largely focused on the development and implementation of long-term strategies, but we are seeing already this tipping into more countries starting to come with a request for the update of their NDCs. So what does it mean in terms of opportunities for Ministries of Finance through the thematic call? I'm not going to walk you through every single bullet. You can take a quick scan, but I wanted to highlight a few examples. So just to give you a sense of what's possible. So for example, under Stream 1, the stream focus on preparatory support, Ministries of Finance can receive support for the development of a long-term vision that takes into account specifically the economic and financial implications of that vision that the country is setting for itself. We can provide capacity building so that the Ministries of Finance can have dedicated capacity to engage proactively in the process and engage them in the process of the subsequent request for support so that the country can access additional support in Streams 2 and 3. Under Stream 2, which is the development of update and ambition enhancement, we can support Ministries of Finance with the deployment of expertise so that they can take a leading role in the process of NDC and long-term strategy development. We can work with the Ministries of Finance so that they receive support to integrate economic risks and assessment of opportunities of NDCs and long-term strategies through costing and macroeconomic and macrofiscal modeling. And through Stream 3, which is ultimately the one that is jump-starting the long-term transformation through the laid out through the long-term strategies, support can come through to help formulate legislation, regulatory instruments, policy reforms that can drive the transition, including mainstreaming of climate into economic and fiscal policies. And we can support the development of investment plans and financing strategies that drive the implementation of the long-term strategies. So just to give you a sense of what we're already supporting, and I'll just focus on 2 examples. So for example, we have the case of the country of Togo, which has already submitted a request through the thematic call, and which with support from UNDP is kicking off its work for developing a long-term vision for low emission and climate resilient development. This includes support for assessing socioeconomic benefits of long-term strategies and the drafting of a roadmap and the methodology that will guide the development of this strategy. So they have engaged in the preparatory stage. And we have at the other end a country like Zimbabwe, which is one of the African countries that has already submitted a long-term strategy. And Zimbabwe has sought support via the partnership to develop a comprehensive investment plan and sectoral roadmaps to implement the commitments enshrined in their long-term strategies and their NDC. And their request, interestingly enough, includes creating a system for monitoring and evaluating climate finance flows. So, how can coalition members engage with the partnership through the thematic call? Number one, you can be in touch with us, with the NDC support unit, and we can work through the focal points to engage the Ministries of Finance to develop requests that incorporate what they can bring to the table and what they need so that Ministries of Finance can engage more proactively. I just wanted to flag that we have dedicated assistance from our expert partners at the 2050 Pathways platforms to help formulate those requests. Once the requests are finalized, they are shared with all of our partnership members, and implementing and development partners then come back with basically their offers of support, leveraging their resources and their expertise so that we can put a tailored package of support for countries based on the offers of different partners. At that stage, we develop a joint work plan, which basically aims to coordinate the various offers of support. It facilitates the coordination, and it also serves as the basis for tracking, reporting, and extracting lessons. Moving forward, the global stocktake is, in our view, has to be a global accelerator for governments to pursue the transformational change and to inform the climate and investment decisions that lie ahead. And in that sense, we expect coming out of this COP an increase in requests to support the update and enhancement of NDCs and long-term strategies. This means that there's a unique opportunity, this moment, to ensure that national ministries of finance are integrated in the process of planning the NDCs and LT-LEDS. And the NDC partnership stands ready to support that engagement and collaboration with the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action. So with that, that is the introduction of the thematic call and how we see the opportunity to collaborate with the coalition. And with that, it is my pleasure to invite our moderator, Raleen Bekkers, Coalition Co-Chair and Sherpa and Special Representative of the Minister of Finance for Climate Action of the Netherlands. Raleen, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Great to be back here, because I actually have a history with the NDC Partnership. So it's really nice to be able to bring these two together and make the links. So we're going to have now a very interesting panel discussion with three great speakers. But first of all, I think it's really important that we acknowledge this really insightful presentation from the NDC Partnership and this very concrete offer of support. Because it's very important that now that we are about 2 years, actually 1.5 years ahead of 2025, updating deadline, that we get started and that we make sure that from the beginning, Ministries of Finance are involved. We all know, we've heard from all the speakers that Ministry of Finance play a central role, that we need to make sure this time costs and benefits and everything is clearly included, and the macroeconomic perspective is integrated integrally in the next round of NDC. So do it better than we have done so far. So to echo my minister's words, we are very sure that this collaboration will support Ministries of Finance of the coalition to prepare their NDCs or be involved in the preparation of their NDCs and LTS in a meaningful way, and that this will be very valuable to all and eventually to the climate challenge. So I encourage all of you and everyone as part of the coalition to really make use of this offering, and we'll start rolling that out after this event, after COP, when we really get to work. So now I really would like to just go and invite this esteemed panel of today. First of all, Dr. Sam Mugume Kujo, the Assistant Commissioner for Macroeconomic Policy Department, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development of Uganda. Please. Hi, Sam. Great to see you. Then Mr. Mats Lidbergen, Senior Advisor, the Center for Climate, Green Economy and the EU, Ministry of Finance of Denmark. Welcome, Mats. And then, last but definitely not least, Maria Lawati Dorotantuesco, Undersecretary, Department of Finance of the Philippines. Thank you so much. We're going to go into some great questions, but let me just briefly share what these great people have already done in both places. So they are very active in the Coalition of Finance Ministers as well. And Sam, he's the current country lead of Helsinki Principle 1 and 6. These are the principles about alignment with the Paris Agreement and about involvement in the NDC process. So more than timely or important to have you here in this discussion. And in addition, you also lead the adaptation work stream, which must never be forgotten and is also a very critical part of the NDCs. So also important to look at how we bring the finance ministries in there to integrate that perspective. And then Mats, he's the country lead for the Helsinki Principle 2 for mainstreaming climate and economic policy. Specifically, he leads work around macroeconomic modeling. So again, this is very important to discuss as we look at the NDCs. What does it mean to integrate macroeconomic models in there, or climate in macroeconomic models? And then Maria from the Philippines has a fantastic practical example from the Philippines, where the Ministry of Finance is really in the driving seat of the development or preparation of the NDC, leading the Climate Change Commission, but also really showing how it can be done, how this Ministry of Finance can play a very central role. So I'll join you on the panel. Okay, so we're gonna kick off the panel now, and I'd like to start with Sam. So Uganda, you're clearly a climate champion, and you've been leading all these working groups. So how can engagement with the Ministry of Finance contribute to ambitious, implementable, investable, financeable, all these words we've heard this morning, NDCs and long-term strategies? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Thank you so much, Elaine, and my pleasure to be here. Honorable Minister and the rest who are here. It's a big pleasure really from Uganda, and thank you for the bigger calls. We've been leading these working groups, HP6, Helsinki Principle 6, and Helsinki Principle 1. What I mean, one is making sure NDCs are implemented and Minister of Finance engaged, and the other one is for LTS and long-term strategies. That's HP1. And it's really, for us, really, I would like to tell everybody who's here, by leading, we've learned a lot. That's number one, and very clear, and the adaptation, because adaptation is at the heart of what we should do. We've been strategic enough to lead so that we can learn and be able to get assistance. I'm happy to note that we've gotten assistance from NDCP. We've been partners for a long time, but we also have an economic advisor who has been with us for the last four years, and she's done tremendous work to help us get this mainstream. Okay, how do we get the NDCs and LTS, the Minister of Finance, get engaged and have them implemented, and all those things that Relen talked about get as a result? One, implementing NDCs and LTCs, these are plans, definitely. And what do we need is money. We need money, and Minister of Finance, we are the custodian of money. We make sure we get resources, we know how to allocate resources, we're in charge of budgets, we're in charge of national development plans. Number one is to ensure that NDCs and long-term strategies are aligned to our national development plans and reflected in our budgets, and domesticated as much as possible. In my view, that's very, very critical to make NDCs become implementable. And Minister of Finance, for that to happen, we should be at the forefront. Two, we are the most capacity-wise in our countries, we're the most able ministries to ensure we make justifiable economic, reasoning for the actions that are embedded in the NDCs and the LTS, so that they can be funded domestically and externally, so that we can have bankable projects. This is what we do. And also, when it comes to reviewing, we've seen the last 3 years when we got engaged really as Minister of Finance, there's a shift. Ambitious, but realistic. That's very, very key. Can it fit within our budget? If we are looking at getting finances from outside, how much can we get? If this money comes in, will it keep the macroeconomic stability that we're working on? So this is our work. And lastly, we must make sure we get the finances. The climate finance units in our countries, which are within our ministries, should be functional and make sure the money comes in. I will be a little, if you allow me to tell you.
Always, whatever it is.
Yeah, what has worked really as we've been doing this in our country, what we've seen, one of the things that we've seen can have is working together. You know, we have power, yes, Minister of Finance, but ensuring that we get all the government arms understanding climate change issues, the judiciary, the legislative, and again, having that is key. But having the government, the whole government approach, which we are trying, but still it has challenges. If we got the challenge, they will be big. But that is very, very key. And what we've done is to have like a tripartite agreements in our country, the National Planning Authority, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Water and Environment, and other ministries working with the statistical office so that we can be together and make sure we move on. Research, having the data is very, very key that you'll use for your macroeconomic models and be able to explain is very, very important. What we cannot forget is working closely with the development partners and also making sure that we share amongst our countries, amongst the global world, different countries, and that's what takes us to the coalition, to be able to share and be able to see what is happening in Denmark, what is happening, you know, so that we can be able to implement and be, this is the important thing where Minister of Finance can get engaged and what we can do. I kind of thank you for allowing me, Ralen, to do that.
Thank you so much, and thanks for your leadership and for that great example. And indeed, good to hear from the other countries here as well and exchange among each other, also from the different perspectives, but very practical examples. So let's move to Mats from Denmark. You've clearly been also a leader and frontrunner on climate, including modeling, budgeting, and also a fun fact is that Denmark is the incoming co-chair of the NDC Partnership. So we can make a really good link there between the coalition and the partnership. So could you elaborate a bit on the role that the Ministry of Finance is playing in Denmark in advancing climate action? And perhaps also a little comment on how you think we should collaborate between these platforms effectively.
Certainly, Rally. But first of all, thanks for honourable ministers for this event. It's great to be here. I want to make 2 points today. One is around learning from each other and sharing his experience. The other thing is around getting stuff done with the NDCs. So starting with the first one, it's important that our coalition is a coalition of finance ministers. So it's not a coalition of technical experts. It's at the minister level. So I'll start there. In 2019, when my minister, Mr. Nikolai Vammen, entered office, we had a very ambitious domestic reduction target. He looked at that and said, that is not just a simple thing. That is a socio-economic transformation. That is at least as big as what we were doing when we were developing the Nordic welfare states back in the 70s. You need to be on top of this, know it, know the cost, just like you're doing on the budget, because this is a big thing. So he basically set out, I want the Ministry of Finance to be sort of a green engine of society. And from there, it trickled down to the Ministry's vision statement, where we got climate and environment in there, along with traditional fiscal economic objectives. Then it was around capacity. We had a center with capacity for this sat down with a mandate to drive action. Then it was about coordination. We took on the coordination of the key functions of government on climate change. And it was around tools. We didn't have an apparatus to look at the macroeconomic effects of what we're doing. So our minister said, we know someone who's building a macroeconomic model that can treat greenhouse gas emissions just like we treat other parts of sort of key macroeconomic factors. We've been developing that. That is now very close to being put in use for a new green taxation reform in agriculture. And that's being done in-house in the Ministry of Finance, together with our climate ministry and all the other ministries. So you can say our experience is really that it starts from the top down, and if you have it, then you can really do stuff. But what we've been doing in the coalition since is sharing those experiences. We are good at macroeconomic modeling. On adaptation, we have so much to learn from other countries. We haven't been doing much on that. But we have had a great sort of basically study group in the Coalition of Finance Ministers, where ministers of finance and their officials have been learning from each other, building their knowledge, getting their hands around the climate issue. So you can say in the coalition country members, there will be people in the Ministries of Finance who get it. So then we come to working together for the NDCs, because we've been doing all this, doing our study, but now we've got the NDC. The exam is coming up. Luckily, we've been doing a bit of homework. I want to highlight two things. First of all, talking about this is not easy for Ministries of Finance. They're used to talking about budgets and economic risk and so on. But we have published a guide for action in the coalition, which basically sets out the case for climate action, what Ministries of Finance do, how they can integrate climate into their fiscal policy tools, their economic vision and strategy, their capabilities. And it's littered with examples of countries across the world, from Uganda to Denmark to Rwanda to, we have country examples from 30 coalition members there. So that's a cheat sheet in terms of what can you actually do that can be handed to a Minister of Finance. We also have the Climate Action Statement, which is a new thing where it's basically now we need to make a list of the Ministers of Finance that are taking action, that are driving this forward. So if you want to get inspired, there is a list of who can you talk to, who's developing this kind of tool. If you're a minister, who can I call to say, how do we do green bonds? How do we do a resilience strategy? It's there. So we've got a lot of resource there, and we're very keen to sort of make this available through the NDC partnership and find out how can we help those doing the NDC make it not just about setting a climate target. A good NDC should be an investment plan for climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience that looks and uses these tools we're developing to make investable projects. That can only be done if you have economic ministries doing their job, looking at it, and getting it into the NDCs. So I'm really looking forward to working with the NDC partnership on this. Thanks.
Great, sounds like a plan. Thank you so much, Matt. All right, let's move to Maria from the Philippines. So your Department of Finance plays a very central role in advancing the NDCs, is a cornerstone for sustainable and climate financing in the Philippines. So could you elaborate a bit on how this role has evolved over time and highlight the specific public finance, budgeting, investment strategies for NDCs that have proven effective in your country?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank Raylene for inviting us. You know, we've been exchanging notes. Can you come? Can you go? You know, some our events, like, I'll go if you go. No, just kidding. But thank you very much. I think, just a little bit background before I answer your question. You know, I've been a professor of environmental law for over 8 years, and I recently joined the Department of Finance just this May. And I realized I've been talking to and lobbying to the wrong set of people. I've been going to DNR, the Environment and Climate Change Commission. I should be talking to the Department of Finance, right? So, but kidding aside, but, I meant that. But I can't go back to my pavilion and say that to the other secretaries. But seriously speaking, I think the Philippines has recognized the leadership role that the finance ministers should take. Just one concrete example. We have this domestic adaptation fund. It's called the People Survival Fund. It is funded through our budget. Until recently, it is a 12-year-old fund. Until recently, we haven't been able to commit and appropriate the 1 billion peso fund until recently, just a couple of years ago, when the chairmanship was transferred to the finance minister. We were able now, in just 2 years, we are able to commit 89% of the fund, and we're working on the replenishment of the fund because the Minister of Finance understands the nuances of how to access, how to procure, how to spend the money. And that's what, we're very, very proud of that. Now we are funding over 12 projects, adaptation projects from climate schools, forestry rehabilitation. So it's a great way to showcase domestic mobilization of adaptation fund. Number two, just to show you how important this is, we're coming to COP with an assertion that we believe that economic development, economic growth cannot be had if you don't have the climate action integrated. So we really believe that it should go hand in hand. And that's coming from the Minister of Finance, coming from the head of the economic team, heading the Department of Budget and Management, heading the Economic Development Authority, and even the Bangko Sentral of the Philippines. Another one is recently we launched probably a little late for as compared to others the NDC implementation plan and the National Adaptation Plan of the Philippines, and we're very happy. End of this year, we will be done the financial strategy to how to implement and fund the priority projects in the Philippines. And just, on a micro level, just to show you how serious the President of the Philippines on climate action, the President asked the Secretary of Finance to lead the cleaning of the biggest river in the Philippines. It's a Pasig River cleanup drive. It's a multi-interagency interagency working group, but the one who will lead will be the finance minister, knowing that we can make it work if we only put funding and where to get that. Another aspect, we're going home. The Philippines is trying to make a reform on the military and uniform personnel, and the Minister of Finance, my secretary, told me yesterday that whatever we will save, we put it in the climate adaptation projects. So that's the beauty. We will be able because right now just a little bit. It's my pet project, but it's the military uniform personnel pension is being funded by the government. So we're trying to put up a fund to make it sustainable. And the Secretary of Finance said that we should channel all the savings to climate actions funding. So yeah, so as you can see, there has been a shift. It has been immensely. It's not just about economic growth, but we think that economic growth cannot be had if we don't address the climate issues.
I think that's definitely the core of it. So thank you so much for highlighting it. And I think this is a fantastic panel because it shows how important it is to bring the finance ministries in. I think we're all amplifying that. But you're also providing very concrete ways in which you're doing that. So it's actually you're showcasing as champions how we can get involved, and we can use both the NDC Partnership as the coalition of finance ministers who is coming together this evening to showcase their role in the COP and in the climate process here. So I think we need to continue that and step it up so that we are in a much better place in 2 years when we have the next round of NDCs. So I think we have a little bit time left, but we also have a great closing speaker. But I just want to check if there's anyone in the room that has a burning question to any of the participants. Anything you really would like to hear from them after all these great examples that they've already shared? Uzo.
Thank you very much. I'm Uzamaka Wamara. I'm from the Commonwealth Secretariat. We're also a member of the NDC Partnership, and I lead on our Commonwealth NDC program. This has been really fantastic to hear from all the panel members. And you see that you're from the countries, really expressing what you're doing on ground. And you touched on, I'll call it the climate finance loop, in terms of what you do for planning, for coordination, the actual demonstration of, the tools from your experience, etc. Now, for me listening, as one of the implementing partners from the partnership, I just wanted to also highlight how from our work in the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, where we've been the most successful is where we've had the backing and the support and active contributions of the Ministries of Finance. So that's a kudos. But I wanted to hear from you, your experience. What would you say to organizations like us, partners like us? What would you want to see more of, in terms of the support that we give? Yes, thank you.
The hot water, good.
All right, let's do some very quick responses from you. Who would like to answer that? Go for it.
Very quick answer, money. Okay, but that aside, really, we are traditional economists and statisticians in Ministries of Finance. Capacity building in what we do to have climate change actions and NDCs and long-term LTS review and implementation is still needed in many countries. Thank you.
Very short as well, giving us a platform where I think we can do a lot of things, and we have a great cooperation with the Ministers of Finance in our coalition. But I think if we want to go out, then providing a platform, getting the right people in the different countries together, finding out who are the people in the Ministries of Finance and other economic institutions that are relevant, gathering them, and you could say having something that's bit plug and play in terms of inviting, you say the co-chair is doing a lot of role, but also country members come out, do this. It would be great to have your voice here. And I think on balance, we, as much as we can, we're keen to get out and share our experiences. But it's hard to organize ourselves, as you could say.
For us, really the technical assistance, because I believe also the ministers of finance are mostly economists, finance people. But moving forward, we've recognized that teams should be multidisciplinary, right? So you have the financial person, the economic, but also the technical one, who will actually tell you about environmental situations, scientists even. So I think we have to work hand in hand, and that's what we're doing in the Department of Finance now. We are hiring not only economists and financial, but people who are actually also have a different point of view, who will add to the team something like an environmentalist in a team on climate finance group. So for your organization, please keep the information coming. Please offer your technical expertise, your technical know-how on the environmental front. So that could be what we need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this excellent panel to also respond very quickly and very concretely. So that is great. Thank you again, Honorable Minister, for joining us and for some excellent opening remarks as well. Really appreciate it. I think we're now going to close the event. I think we have a clear call to action. We have a strengthened partnership here between these two great initiatives. And we'll definitely be scaling up the technical assistance and the support to actually get things done in the coming time. So it's all about partnership. So the Netherlands is definitely not the only co-chair, because we're a co-chair. And that's why we're very pleased that for the closing remarks, we have our co-chair Indonesia, Mr. Paknor, to provide some brief remarks from the Indonesian perspective. Welcome. Please join us on stage.
Thank you, Buralin. So, thank you very much, and very happy to have you all colleagues. So, on behalf of Ibu Masita Kristalin, please let me share the closing remarks from the Indonesia as a co-chair of the coalition. And ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and esteemed participants, as we conclude this insightful discussion on capacity building for nationally determined contributions and long-term strategies in the realm of climate change, I am truly inspired by the depth of insight and commitment that each of you has brought to the table. Until March 2023, we successfully had 177 countries submit their updated NDC. However, only 68 parties submitted their LTS. On the other hand, aligning NDCs and LTS gives many advantages, as the alignment ensures mutual coherence and consistency between the two. When NDCs also consider the long-term goals outlined in LTS, the risk of committing the carbon-intensive, non-resilient infrastructure can be further mitigated. This proactive approach allows countries to reduce costs by investing in appropriate infrastructure, eliminating the need for later phase-out, and designing policies that will provide consistent signals to the private sector for climate action investment. Throughout our discussion today, we have delved into the critical importance of enhancing our capacities to meet the challenges of a rapidly changing climate. Our conversations have traversed the landscapes of policy frameworks, technological advancements, financial mechanisms, and indispensable role of collaborative efforts to support those alignment. With this, I'd like to praise this collaboration between the NDC partnerships and the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate Action in this matter. This is also the type of tangible actions both Indonesia and Netherlands are looking to amplify within the sphere of coalition work. This discussion is also a continuation of the report on Ministers of Finance and nationally determined contributions, raising ambition and accelerating climate action that the coalition launched last year under HP6. From this report, it was stated that Ministries of Finance play a crucial role in evaluating the efficiency of climate expenditures and in turn, aiding decision-making on climate policies. They achieve this by implementing climate indicators and establishing measurement, reporting, and verification systems to enhance transparency and gain a more comprehensive understanding of metrics and trends. This enables the Ministry of Finance to evaluate the efficacy and impact of climate spending, facilitating adjustments for optimal outcomes of the NDC. Let us remember that capacity building is not a one-size-fits-all endeavor. It must be tailored to the unique needs and circumstances of each nation, whether it's through technological transfer, institutional strengthening, or fostering cross-sectoral collaboration. Our approach should be dynamic, adaptive, and fit to country needs. This is something that our minister both highlighting very much. Yeah. Therefore, I would like to thank you and congratulate the NDC partnership for catering such options in the LT-LEDS and NDC alignment update and enhancement, from analyzing just transition elements and its socio-economic impacts. In our discussion today, we've not just sketched the surveys, we have laid the foundation for sustained collaboration. The partnership forged here can be the driving force behind transformative change. It is through shared knowledge, collective action, and a spirit of global solidarity that we will navigate the complex challenges posed by climate change. In closing, I extend my deepest gratitude to each of you for your active participation, thoughtful contributions, and unwavering dedication to a sustainable future. Let our discussion today be the spark that ignites a broader, more inclusive, and more resilient approach to capacity building for NDCs and LTS. Together, let us continue this journey, fortified by the shared vision of a world that thrives in harmony with nature. Thank you, and may our efforts pave the way for a brighter and more sustainable future for generations to come. Thank you so much.
See each other one of these days.